Hello and welcome to YouMatter. Hello and welcome to this next episode in a two-part series that I've been doing, talking to clinicians who've moved out of their clinical role into something different. So I've got three more conversations for you on this episode. The first is with Jonathan Head, who some of you may know as the man who talks to you about nuchal. Jon was a physiotherapist in the MOD, and these days he works, he's sort of the practitioner-facing side of nuchal. I'll let him tell you more about it in the interview, but that's his transition. Then I speak to Helen Underwood, who has a really interesting history just in her physiotherapy world, actually, a bit of a sort of in, out, in story and lots of different physio roles in the acute sector, which has probably influenced where she is now. She now runs her own first aid training company. And the final conversation takes a slightly different tack, talking to Martin Christensen pretty much in the middle of his move out of physiotherapy. He left physio, or did his last physio shift literally the week before last, and has moved into a role that sees him working in essentially a trauma centre for troubled youths. So, a very different scenario. And that conversation gave me an opportunity to talk to Martin about what it's like, being in the moment, actually the raw thoughts around leaving his physiotherapy clinic and for the moment physiotherapy. So I hope you'll find these conversations interesting. I certainly enjoyed conducting them. Let me know what you think. If any of you are in the process of constructing a move out of your clinical role, or you have moved into something else that you'd like to let me know about, or if you'd like to talk to any of the people that I've interviewed about the role they've moved into specifically, or just the process of moving, then do get in touch. In the meantime, enjoy the episode. I'm really pleased to welcome my next transitioner from physio to something else. And this morning I'm talking to Jonathan Head. So, Jonathan was for about 10 years an exercise rehabber for the MOD. And the shift that he made and to where he is now is into a job called Customer Success Officer. That's his job title for nuchal. A brand that many of you will know very well, and I'm sure a lot of you are using nuchal's system. So, welcome, Jon. Thanks ever so much for agreeing to have this next conversation about moving out of, sorry, I said moving out of physio, not moving out of physio. In your case, moving out of being an exercise rehabber. But thank you for coming and having the conversation.
No, thanks for having me, Joe. Been a bit of an honor to be on your podcast in the first place.
Oh, thank you. So, Jon, can you give us a little bit of background as to the build up to trying to deciding to make the change, and maybe a little bit about the moment when you decided to finally jump?
Yeah, so interesting. I felt I was probably going to be in the same job role for life, essentially. I enjoyed it. Loved the MOD setting. I think it's kind of really establishes you as a person, really, because there's lots of leaders around you, and it's flexible in terms of lots of different injury types. It's occupationally led, etc., etc. So I really enjoyed the job role. Um, and I was there for a long time. So there was an element where you just kind of get into something and you know it like the back of your hand. So I
Mm,
become part of the furniture for quite a while in my role. And then I basically my story was that I struggled with anxiety. Back at the back end of COVID, realistically, it started to rear its head. And that took me on a fairly, long journey of trying to deal with what is anxiety, and anxiety's best friend, which is depression. So I
mm,
kind of went down that road of using those two together as a catalyst for change. I didn't know that at the time. It was very much I had to go and deal with some of those parts. And once I'd dealt or deal with, whatever way we want to kind of conceive it, I came out of it being a different person, and that was really what drove me to change. It's not that I didn't love being the clinician, I did, but I also then felt like I needed to do something different to challenge me because I was very comfortable, and comfortable isn't necessarily a good place to be, because you end up doing the same things, or just going through the motions, really. So
mm,
that was the driver for change, and it was really when I came out of having done some therapy myself, which was a very uncomfortable place for a therapist. I have to say, like, I like being on the other chair. It's nice when someone's coming to you with their problems, but when you're going to someone else, it's like, wow, this is the worst thing ever. But actually, once I got over that initial and moved through it, it helped me then realize that maybe I'm not quite happy with what I was doing anymore. And I hadn't even been aware. I think that
Mm.
was the greatest thing. It was awareness was just not there. So anyway, long story short is I kind of went through my therapy side and then kind of came out and I had no idea what else I could do, being completely frank. And I think a lot of therapists feel the same, that you kind of, all right, I've got this skill set, which is great clinically, but what on earth can I do with that?
Mm.
Because it doesn't always transfer into, or you don't think it transfers into any other job role. But the confidence that I gained from having gone through this process was that I had belief in myself again. And so I was like, well, you know what? I became a therapist with no skill set in terms of, you go and do your university degree, you come out of that, you do your first year where you feel like you have that imposter syndrome anyway, and then you slowly build up that actually I can do this and I'm not too bad at what I do scenario.
Mm.
So I was like, well, I can use that experience before and I can take that into something new, I'm sure. Feel it gets slightly harder as we get older, and I don't know if that's more just as a mindset shift that we always think at age is a reason maybe not to do things. But actually, I use that as a catalyst. I can't let that thought and perception drive into anything else I want to do with my life. Otherwise, we would never do anything, right? Because we're
Mm.
like, well, I'm a bit older now, so why would I bother? So yeah, I basically I started just looking at what I was good at, which was emotional intelligence was something that I feel we gain as therapists profession really well. We really understand that person in front of us. So I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure I've got that skill set, rapport building and a loose uh, not passion. Passion's maybe not a strong word, but a use. I want to make things better. So for me, why Nucleus stood out for me in terms of as a clinician was actually this is not bad for what we're trying to really do, which is make the therapist's life easier at times and also make the client's life easier at times. I got involved in a few projects with the MOD from a software side, not leading it or anything like that, but it just gave me an insight that, okay, there is another world out there away from the therapy side that's important. So this then led to me seeing the job role that I'm in now being advertised. And I looked at the job description and then realized that my skill set did not really lead to it. So I was like, right, bugger, how on earth can I get, into that role? And I literally just sent an email, basically explaining that I do not fit the role whatsoever, but I'm willing to give it a very good go. If you're willing to take a risk of just interviewing me from that point. So I think that's how I got the interview. It helped. One of the key aspects was that you had to come from a clinical side, whether practice manager or being a
Mm.
clinician yourself. So that was a tick in the box from that scenario. But actually, I didn't have a software background. I could handle using Zoom calls and stuff like that. What sort of thing. But actually, when it came to the rest of it, I didn't really necessarily fit. But there's that aspect that actually we are transferable with everything we have done. So I leveraged that basically. I kind of took that as that's a key selling point of me is that being a clinician, it exposes you to so many different things.
Mm.
And it, not just software world, it can transfer to any business realistically now that I look at it at the back end. And again, at the time when I was like, what on earth am I going to do with my life now? I don't know what to do. You get stuck in that mode of saying, well, I'm going to have to do this forever. And that was kind of my real big, light bulb moment. I was just like, no, actually, being a therapist is a great tool. Doesn't mean you have to do it forever. And there's also comes to a certain point where you might not enjoy it anymore. I was
Mm.
in between. I was probably like going through, obviously, the anxiety, depression side. That was an element of burnout, an element of PTSD, all kind of mixed into a big pot together. So I can't say it was definitely this what drove the change or not.
Mm.
But for me, it was once you realize that you can use the skill set to do anything else as well, it just really opens up a massive world again. Whereas actually in the MOD, it was like, well, you can be stuck at this banding, and that's your ceiling because you can't be the manager because you can't be a commanding officer unless you want to join the service. So I was like, okay, can't do that. If I went to private practice, I would go back in, I'd work under someone, scenario, and then potentially I'd go and make my own business. But that's not what I wanted to do either. So I was like, right, well, where do I go now? So yeah, again, it was awesome when I actually kind of got the job offer, because it was that feeling of like, okay, everything that you've kind of been through, worked on, and got to, all of a sudden you're seeing that reward come forwards with a job offer at the time.
Mm,
Um, Again, if anyone had said, "Oh, why customer success?" It's a glorified name of saying sales. So
mm,
I'm like, okay, it's a sales role, but I don't see it as a sales role. I see it as a most of the time in the UK, or not even just outside of the UK, people do not like using technology or software too much. We're kind of a bit frightened by it. So the same as that, in practice, when someone comes into you with their back pain or knee pain and they're like, I'm not sure what I should be doing with this, what's the best approach? It's the same for me, that it's the same process.
mm,
All right, I just jazz it up as like, my pain is my software. I don't know how to get it better. And I'm like, okay, let me show you how you could do this, this, and this. And we kind of make a plan and approach, and make sure it fits the person at the end of the day. The same as
mm,
going to see a therapist. I might go and chuck exercise prescription down someone's throat because of my bias, but actually they might go and need to say, I think you need to go and see someone for hands-on treatment, or go and speak to a counselor or something along those lines, based on what that initial appointment says and suggests. So the skill set's exactly the same. I just changed the names and faces essentially. Which again, I found I didn't really think it would link together, but it does.
mm.
So much of what we've learned can transfer into the next stage of whatever your career goals are or aspirations. So yeah, that's my long story short. Why Nucal?
Mm. Yeah, and I can see that the moment happened essentially because you got offered that job, and after that build up, I guess it was a no-brainer. As you say, you'd done the work, you'd had the therapy, you knew you needed to change, and you'd got the job that you had stretched yourself to go
Mm,
for. I love the fact that you emailed and said, I don't fit the profile, but would you give me a go anyway? And it sounds like, just going back to the anxiety and depression phase, I think what I hear you saying is it wasn't necessarily the job that was causing that. There was probably a number of things. And I've seen some
mm,
really honest posts you put on LinkedIn about losing your dad, and that, that there
mm,
were contributing factors. But I'm interested actually because you and the only other man that I've interviewed in this series so far, there have been two men and three women. The other man was a physio, and he actually is now a vicar.
mm,
But he had a similar story in that he'd had some problems with, I think, with anxiety and depression with Simon as well.
mm.
And yeah, I guess it was slightly different in that his faith, he suddenly realized that that was a really, really important thing. But what I hear with you is you went through this process, and then, I don't know, it almost sounded when you were describing it like um, you almost had to make a change to honor where you'd got to in your therapy, rather than that there was something
Yeah,
desperately wrong with the job that you were doing.
yeah, no, I agree. I don't think, like all things in life, you can blame, or not blame, but you can use things as a reason for it. But ultimately, for me, in my mind, now I look back and reflect, and most of the things that go on our own minds are internally driven. Like, we use external processes to validate them to a certain
Mm,
extent, but
mm,
I don't think it's the job that ever makes you unhappy. I think it's sometimes doing the same things that can make you unhappy. Like
oh,
I just didn't want to have the same drive anymore. And in terms of, I had a long commute, so I was like, I'd rather not do that anymore and try
mm,
something different. But I think it was also, for me, it was, as a therapist, I always felt that sometimes, like, you would take on people's problems as well. You
yeah.
you inherit them, don't you? So for me, it was also, how do I reduce the amount of that I see, which was quite an important. I never really thought about it, because again, before I went down the therapy line, it was like, how's John? Yeah, John's fine, no problems at all. Almost like a male, and again, I look back and, where do you learn that from? You kind of male figures around you.
Mm.
And from, my father, his father would have been, the warring generation. So
Yeah.
actually, we're really just starting to find that males are starting to open up about things a lot more. And again, for me, that's important to validate as well. That actually,
Yeah.
I went for a long time in my life never validating my feelings, because why would I bother? I'm fine. I'm always fine. And at which point,
Mm.
when I realized I wasn't fine and I didn't know how to cope with that, it kind of then opened up this Pandora's box of like, where do I want to go with this? Because I'd done, the initial part of, dealing with your emotions, your feelings when you go to see someone. But I was like, I think I can dig further and actually start to get something out of me a bit more,
Mm.
which is where I went down the career route, because I could have left it at just, I'd dealt with that and I'll carry on and I'll go back to, working in the role I was. And I would have been content doing that, I'm sure. Like, again, I still felt like I had
Mm.
purpose, but I just felt there was more to unlock. And for me, it's about
Mm.
challenging myself all of a sudden. Whereas before, I was quite happy not taking risks.
Mm.
So this job change essentially was one of the first big risks that I took. It wasn't so much
Right.
streamlined of saying that, you've got security, the perks of working for the MOD is, I was a civil servant, very nice, yada, yada, get a good amount of holiday per year. And then joining an organization that's, essentially, multinational.
Mm.
I don't know what the organization's like. I have no idea. And in a sales role, what if I don't hit a target, or, will I just be kicked out the door? So I had all those things that run through my mind. But actually, like most things in life, you have to just give things a try.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you'll ask questions. Or I always had a friend whose dad told him that basically you have to have a colouring book of your life, because you don't want to get to the end of it and then have pages that are just unfilled. So for me, it's just about colouring in my pages, going and explore options. And at the end
Mm.
of it, you'll find what you're maybe looking for, or maybe we never find what 100% we're looking for. But if you don't try something, you don't know.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that seems not too dissimilar. I think when you've been on that journey, a bit like, when you've seen those patients that come in and you treat them, and then they're like, I think I wouldn't mind being a physio or X, and
Mm.
they go off and they do it, and it's because they were inspired by that spark. And for me, the spark was like,
Absolutely.
well, I use the darkness of it to basically build the light. Because again, it's not a very nice place to be when you're kind of
Mm.
with the anxiety, depression scenario. But actually, if you can re-harness that power, I mean, for me, it's like I just don't want to go back there. So I'm
Yeah.
going to work as hard as possible to not be there. And again, it's a bit like our chronic lower backs. It's like, look, there's a chance it could re-trigger, but if you work hard at it and you maintain, then there's a good chance that it won't re-trigger as well. So
Yeah.
that's
And there's a life to be lived, possibly still with pain. But yeah, as you say, there's more
yeah,
pages of the colouring book to colour in. And I loved what you highlighted about the the transferable skill of being able to cope with lots of different things that are thrown at you. And yeah, I've come across quite a few people who've gone into sales type roles, and you're right, you'd almost think it'd be the absolute opposite thing that a therapist would want to go into.
mm,
Um, it sort of in theory challenges all our views about being caring and altruistic, doesn't it? But
yeah,
I mean,
100%.
I can absolutely confirm for people listening, having experience working with you as a inverted commas salesperson for Nucal, it
Yeah.
definitely didn't feel like a sales experience. It felt like you helping me see the benefits of something which would do my business, a lot of good. And it was a very, I mean, sure you won't mind me saying, John, that there were
Mm,
two systems, weren't there, that I
yep.
was interviewing at the same time, and I was able to be completely honest with you all the way along about what was influencing my decision making and my final decision,
Mm,
which was a hair's breadth in the end. But I um, really enjoyed the experience of going through that with you and never felt under pressure in the way that you do when you're in this really horrible salesy situation with somebody. So, I think you are living out what you've said about that. Um, the transferable skill of being able to adapt, which I think should really encourage people thinking about making a shift, but also the really good use that you can put your skills around emotional intelligence to in so many other roles. I think people find it
Yeah,
encouraging.
yeah, I'd definitely say that emotional intelligence side just comes into it. Again, I'm always a clinician first, and
Mm,
regardless that you can't lose that period of your life regardless. So I don't feel like that escapes me. So whether it's selling software or if I go on to do anything else, I think there's always going to be that element that I want to continue because there's was it the word authenticity
mm,
that kind of springs to mind, and ultimately, like, I don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable. You can read a room, and again, if someone's pushing someone from the sales side, like say we bought a new car, my wife did not too long ago, and the guy just made me feel a bit uncomfortable because it
mm,
was very much like you were trying to sell that car, and I was like, you don't need to, like,
mm.
really, we make our own decisions anyway, based on how that person or the product makes you feel. So I think
Yeah.
all you're doing is a catalyst for that, and you can do it in a nice approach as well,
Mm,
realistically. And most of the time, I generally find with software side, it's just really showing people how to use it. I feel like the skill set comes at the end of the journey. When someone has it, it's more like this is how you're going to go and use it moving forward.
yeah.
Because otherwise, it's like all things. You can give someone a tool, but if they don't know how to use it to its full efficiency, then it becomes not quite as good a tool as what they first signed up for. So
Mm, like your
again, I have lots
iPhone.
of yeah, again, like we all, oh, it's got this, and this. And actually, by the time we end up using it, what can we do on it? We can take a picture, we can send a WhatsApp and maybe a few emails. So again, we've got this fancy product, but not necessarily the need or know how to harness it. So yeah,
Yeah.
again, a lot of those conversations come back. And I think that's that rapport building as well at the start, is that, again, I was always hopeful to get, I'll be transparent. I never got Joe over the game line to join Newcord. It was one of my biggest, I was like, I would have really have liked to work with Joe and the team, and just because I got on well with them as well. But I think the key bit is that I end up having, 6 months down the line, I'm still having conversations with people just to
Yeah.
harness. Okay, like, have you used this yet? Okay, let's have another meet and let's just make sure you've got this, and this going on as well. Because there's so
Never
much
say
to it.
never, John. I still don't 100% know if it was the right decision or not.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, it's whether you choose Batman or Superman, so that's fine. Again,
Exactly.
it's a
It's
good
a good
system.
choice.
So yeah. But yeah, again, I think for me, it's just using different skill sets and around, and it doesn't have to be sales roles. I like the sales role actually as a clinician because we like data. So again, if you're saying, okay, well, I've got
Yeah,
a certain target to make, then okay, it's like repetitions in a gym scenario. Okay, fine, I can do that. Why not?
I
So
understand that. Yeah. So, John, I've been asking everybody if there's anything they miss from their previous roles or anything you missed from either the MOD or being an exercise rehabber in the MOD.
definitely MOD in general is a very unique lifestyle. So I think the clinicians that I worked with were all very, what's the word? You could just get on with them so well. Like,
Mm,
so our lunch times, we'd often, either group exercise or we'd be playing sport or something. So I miss my lunch times. That's probably my main thing. I'll be honest, I really don't miss the therapy side too much. I
mm.
still do a little bit anyway, just to keep my clinical head in
Oh
the
dear.
game. But yeah, minimal amount compared to,
Mm,
full-time gigs. So I think for me, it's that I don't miss the patient side and their problems, but for me, I miss the environment where you're working together. And I think that's the big thing. Like, Nuke was a remote role, so I don't have that same team
yeah.
feeling at times. So you have to try and harness it as best you can. Or
Mm.
again, what I've done is just go and use outside environment and kind of make those relationships as well.
I was
So
going to say, I think we're the type of people that probably need that interaction so much that we will find it somewhere in our lives, won't we? Even if the job isn't providing it as easily as it used to.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Well, John, thank you so much for talking to me. I'm actually going to finish with a little anecdote from my son, who we recently dropped off at uni, just thinking about what you were saying about conversations around mental health and hopefully
Mm,
things are moving on for the next generation. So we were pulling into York last weekend. He's gone to York Uni and we were getting close to the city, and I said, "Oh, it's exciting, well, isn't it? We're nearly there." And he said, "It is exciting, Mum, but it's also a bit nerve-wracking." And I said, "Yeah, yeah." I said, and are you nervous? And he said, yeah, I'm a bit nervous. I'm not a lot nervous though, because if I was a lot nervous, I'd tell you I was fine. And I said,
Oh,
oh,
that's good.
good to know. But I
Yeah,
thought
yeah,
that's, the self-awareness and the bluff. They've definitely moved
yeah.
on.
I mean, again, that's what I love about the kind of generation coming up is that they're much more open than, yeah, I'm a bit of a closed book in that kind of 80s babies, but they're kind of,
Yeah.
yeah, the next gen, they're so much more open. That's incredible.
He's blown his
Yeah.
cover though. Next time he tells me he's fine.
Well, that's it. Well, and again, a mother always knows as well. So, yeah, there's no getting around that.
No. Well, I'm really pleased to see you smiling with your new cool banner there, and I'm glad it's been such a good transition for you, Jon. And again, thank you so much for talking to me.
Thanks for having me, Joe. Pleasure.
Take care. So, for my next little session in this series of interviews, I'm delighted to welcome ex-physiotherapist Helen Underwood. Hi, Helen.
Hi, Joe. Thanks for having me on board.
Oh, thanks for agreeing to have the conversation. So, Helen has just told me a very, very interesting physio history, which I'm not going to attempt to list. I'm going to get her to tell you about that at the moment. But the transition that Helen has made is from physiotherapy to where she is now, which is her job title is expert trainer and founder of expert first aid trainer. Sorry, Helen, you corrected me on that before. Expert first aid trainer and founder of Underwood Training. That's where she is now. So, Helen, do you mind giving us that wonderful potted history of your path through and eventually out of physiotherapy?
Absolutely. It was a very weird and wonderful route. So I was actually a physio that works mostly in acute care. I think a lot of public perception is that it's outpatients and sports injuries. And I specialised in paediatrics quite early on, doing junior rotations in paediatrics at Bristol Children's. And then I worked at Birmingham Children's with some the rotations next level up senior two, and then I actually had a little bit of I suppose a little wobble in terms of my mental health looking back, because I had 15 children die in a 10-week period with no support who I'd been
Oh
working with
my goodness.
closely. So I actually ran away for 6 months and worked a ski season as a cook. And it was while I was doing that, I managed to get a place on a first aid course as part of the organisation I was going with, because there was a space with the ski instructors. And I realised that I'd learnt a new head bandage, but the rest of it I knew because it was all transferable skills from my physio world. Following that, I came back to the UK. And I locumed in London for a while, mostly in a mixture of adult respiratory and paediatrics. Then I moved up to Leeds, where I'm based now, and worked in a mixture of paediatric locum, followed by a permanent senior one position in respiratory adult ICU with combined paediatric ICU attached. That became stressful for other reasons, loads of on calls, a permanent vacancy at the senior two grade below me, managing juniors to get on the on call rota, but for very little time were they confident with helipads for trauma, a regional liver transplant unit. So I left there and actually went to work at a BUPA, which has now been taken over and is something else in our area, at a private hospital, which was mostly adult based physio, post-surgical, bit of cardiac rehab, bit of pulmonary rehab. And that had different stresses because we were suddenly expected to do lots of audits and things on top of the clinical caseload, but no actual time to do that.
Mm.
So I decided enough was enough. I became asthmatic in my 20s through breathing in powdered latex dust. Working on intensive care is the thought of how that came about. Other allergies were developing, and I decided it was time to get out. So
Mm.
I ran away to Scotland for a year, where I booked myself on a 12-month-long outdoor instructor program for outdoor pursuits. Qualified to teach canoeing, kayaking, rock climbing, archery, a few other random things besides. An amazing year. The only thing negative about it was the midges, because the Scottish midges think I taste beautiful for some reason. Um, Absolute blast. Came back to Leeds and started doing a little bit of bank work for physio, but then mostly starting to build up the outdoor pursuits instructor side of things. Very difficult to do because it's bit work and you get paid for the actual contact hours rather than the
Mm.
full days. And someone on the course in Scotland, one of the assessors for a module, had said, Helen, thought about first aid training with your background. My thoughts just went back to this course I'd done when I did the skis and thought, yeah, I can do that.
Mm.
I taught people lots of different skills, lots of the lower grades for things for on-call rotors, did lots of in-service training and things as a physio. So I got myself on a first aid trainer training course. Um, didn't learn a lot of new things, but learned some of the ways that things had to be done for certification routes and accreditations and things. And it kind of went from there.
Wow, what a journey.
It was
What
a
a
very
better
random
word.
journey. There's been a few hiatuses in the way, and I've had to then gain teaching qualifications as goalposts has moved and do other things to keep validated. But it's been a very interesting journey. But I hand on heart, I'm a better first aid trainer for having been where I was in the acute NHS setting.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, you say it's random, but actually, as I'm listening, rightly or wrongly, I hear a theme going through of the acute sectors that you worked in, but also even when you took your breaks, skiing, outdoor pursuits in Scotland, is there this sort of I don't know if the phrase is right, but adrenaline thrill-seeking part of you? Is that part of your makeup?
I don't think I'm massively adrenaline seeking, but I think I'm a doer. I'm an active person, and I
Mm,
think I'm very much a people person.
mm,
So you've got somebody who's rock climbing for the first time and they're really scared about the heights, but looking at how you can coach them to actually move past that fear and reach their goals and aspirations. And so, some of the outdoor stuff, there's people on my courses that did way more adrenaline stuff than me. It's not that I was after the really big stuff, but I think just
yes.
loving outdoors in the fresh air. And I think I'm a real people person that loves communicating with others. And I guess both the outdoor coaching and also the first aid training, that's an integral part of it.
Yeah. So do you get to satisfy all of that in your current role now?
On the whole, because I do teach outdoor first aid, outdoor incident management for
Ah, okay.
people doing outdoor sports coaching, because all sports coaches have to have a valid first aid ticket or their coaching qualifications not valid. So the two do marry really well. And I've got a few canoe clubs locally who love using me because I don't actually canoe or kayak anymore at the moment. Family things and things have moved in different directions. But actually, I've got a real knowledge of the sport.
Mm,
So I've got that experience, that background. I can make the scenarios in the training of the first aid relevant. If they're talking about something that happened, I've got really a good understanding of
mm.
the mechanisms of that.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And the fact that you still get to be around those environments and those people must really reward that part of you. Do you, if you take yourself back, Helen, to the moment where you decided to leave that last Bupa job, um, did you know at that point that that was you hanging up your physio boots? And if so, how did it feel?
I wasn't quite 100% sure that I was definitely hanging up the boots, as it were. And I kind of hung on a little bit for probably about 6, 8 months by
Mm,
staying on the bank there as I came back from Scotland. But because I'd had this big gap with the 12 months in Scotland, I was only ever the second person on the bank shift for the weekend, which meant that quite often I was just, it's a bit like being on call. You've got £20 for the privilege of just being there in case needed and often not called in. So I quickly realised that a, I wasn't getting enough hours to keep my actual professional registration up. And B, the professional registration was looming again, and it was an extra X £100 to do that for the next year. And I think that's the point when I made the actual decision that actually I've got starting to get enough of a business building up as a sole trader at that time that actually I could just let it go.
yeah, so you had already, yeah, as you say, that year had kind of cushioned it a little bit. Um, and is there anything you really miss about being a physio or being in those environments that you worked in as a physio?
I don't think massively because I get so much or people contact rather than patient contact, and
Mm,
there's some really good colleagues. Um, I would say that in a way, sometimes I miss just having regular colleagues at work because I've got a very small team that I now work with, and I was a sole trader for a while. But actually, this afternoon, just before speaking to you, I've just come from one of our local hospices where I've just done the resuscitation for the healthcare professionals there. And because I've again got that clinical background, I understand where people are coming from. It's one of the
Mm.
things I'm regularly now doing is going into there's two local hospices. There's a number of dental practices, a couple of GP practices locally, and I'll go and I'll do the resus training, and they can just talk medical at me. I can make it very relevant to their particular setting, and particularly with the hospice, because I'm there usually every month, bar August, holiday month for everybody. Actually, I'm regularly seeing some colleagues,
Right.
and I get that fulfilled in that way. And it's really exciting for me to be able to still share that clinical knowledge as
Mm.
well. So I don't think there's anything that I'm really missing. The thing I don't miss is the on-calls. Really
You're
do
not the
not
first
miss
person to say that in this
being
series.
up at the middle of the night, pouring rain, pitch black, getting in because of a poorly person. So that's the thing I really don't miss. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think I'm a better first aid trainer for what I've done. There's nothing I teach about on any course that I haven't actually physically dealt with at some point, right down to meningococcal septicemia, spinal injuries, anything that we cover on a course. I have actually dealt with patients that have
Mm.
those conditions or injuries at some point, which I think is quite a unique place to teach,
Mm.
actually.
Yes. And is there anything, so I hear that those sort of clinical experiences are really helpful to draw on. Is there anything about you as a person, or do you think physios in general as people that that are really transferable as traits rather than skill sets? Have you because you're a business owner as well, aren't you? You're not it's not just delivering the uh, first aid training. You've had to set up and market and sustain a business.
Yes.
I mean, not to generalize, obviously no two physios are the same, but do you think there are any particularly useful traits amongst the people that go into physio to be able to shift into other careers?
I think so. Trying to think exactly how to put them into words, having just
Yeah.
on the spot. I think we are very people orientated,
Mm.
and as people orientated people, I think we're really good at communication. So I think communication skills, whether that be delivering a training course or with customers, suppliers, I think that's a real transferable skill that goes anywhere. I think because of the caseloads that we used to manage, I think we can be fairly organised, and that's certainly something you need to be when you're running a business. Although sometimes you feel like you're juggling 101 plates. And I think that's probably the hardest thing of moving from physio to being a business owner was all the other bits that go with running a business that I suddenly had to learn. So you've got to do
Mm.
the accounting, the marketing, these days the social media. As I've started to get a little bit bigger, I've got a very small number of people that now work with me, but managing staff and payrolls and other things that go with it. So it's not just delivering the training, it's all the other stuff that goes with
Mm.
it. And I think the juggling of caseloads and responsibilities and such like has probably helped with the jugglingness of a number of those things as well.
Yeah, we tend to have quite a have a go attitude, don't we, at things we don't know, which is probably to our benefit and detriment in that, when you're running a business, the number of things you potentially could have a go at are, infinite, aren't they?
100%. I think sometimes guilty of taking too much on for sure. So we need to learn our limits. But also, as you say, have a go. I mean, I've been learning a very vertical learning curve with technology. So I'm actually just embarking on creating a virtual first aid course for parents to
Oh,
get
wow.
first aid knowledge out there. And hopefully it's going to be ready to launch in 2 to 3 weeks' time. So I'm in the final editing stage, having created videos. I'm editing videos. I've got a platform to put it on, link to the website. So this is all really new stuff, but a really exciting new area. And as you said, it's that have go attitude. It's taken a lot
Mm.
longer to get it live than my dream was because there's been too many things happening. And I think that's maybe something I still need to learn is to rein things in. But as you say, that I can give it a go, I can make a go of this
Yes.
attitude and
And
realize
my
progress, not perfection.
Yes, I'm smiling because I'm not sure that patience is a massive trait amongst physios either. We tend to want everything done yesterday, don't we? Just get on with
I think that's
it.
so true, actually. It's very true of me. But sometimes there just isn't enough hours in the day to do,
No.
particularly when you've got family outside of work as well. So
Yes, no, I completely identify with that. And apologies to any extremely patient physios listening. I'm sure there are very patient physios out there.
I'm sure there
So,
are, but Joe and I are of a similar thing.
sounds like it. So, could you ever go back? Do you see that in your future? Sounds like you're not scared of, future changes if they come, but
I
is
don't
physio
think
in
I
any way
would.
there?
I don't think I would because it would take so much effort to retrain, and I absolutely love what I do now. I love that I teach a wide range of courses, and about 4 years ago, I moved into also teaching first aid for mental health, as
Oh,
that's become
wow.
much more of a thing as well. So I do the
Yeah.
physical first aid and the mental health side because they're both equally important parts of our makeup, I believe. So I've moved into that. I've now got the virtual bits and pieces. I'm a trustee for a local charity. I'm a DFib guardian at that charity as well for a local DFib. I've got a child that has various things needing supporting as well through their
Mm.
school. So I don't think I would want to retrain and go back.
There would be a lot to unpack if you did, by the sound of it, or a lot to let go of. This ecosystem that you've created sounds really, there's an awful lot of threads to it, aren't there? I mean, all connected, but you're doing a lot.
Is that a physio trait, do you think? Do you think we can take that as well?
I think it definitely is another one, isn't it? Web builders, spider web
Networkers,
builders. Yes, 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 definitely.
100%.
Um, I mean, on a very practical level, Helen, as we draw the conversation to a close, I know as a business owner that getting first aid training isn't always terribly easy these days, even though we all need to do it. Um, I didn't ask you actually, is yours predominantly online or in person? Or do you do both?
I do a little mix. So predominantly it's in person, but then I have some virtual offerings.
Okay.
So my first little foray into virtual was actually for the hospice, for St Gemma's Hospice, because going into COVID, they couldn't do their resuscitation face to face.
Yeah.
So I actually went and created some films with them, and they kindly said I could stick them up through my website as well. So they're very COVID orientated resuscitation,
Yeah.
and it doesn't suffice for actually doing the physical hands-on skills on a mannequin, but it's a great refresher for people.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of in-person courses if there's groups. For individual healthcare professionals such as physiotherapists, I've usually got one or maybe two per term open basic life support courses. But if people get in touch and there isn't something going, then I usually plan a date a little bit ahead. We agree a date, and then I just stick it on the website and see if anyone joins them, is a way of
Perfect.
doing it. Or if there's a group, then I can put on a date together. If it's something like the more mainstream courses, of course, people can just book themselves onto those, and they're a little bit easier to actually
Or your
access.
mainstream first aid updates,
Yeah, so emergency
mandatory.
first aid at work, paediatric first aid at work, and the outdoor course, of course, as well. That's a mainstream one as well. So there's so many different areas to first aid. If you look at the website, I think I've got something ridiculous like 20 different courses that I offer
Wow.
regularly, but then I'll bespoke and tailor courses for individual client needs. So it really is quite unlimited. And I think that's one of the reasons why I wouldn't career change now is that actually there's so many possibilities and there's so much variety, I think is the word. I
Mm.
get bored. And every single course is different because of the things that the candidates bring to it in terms of previous experience and questions that actually keeps me on my toes as well.
Yeah, no, your enthusiasm and your happiness in what you do really shines through. You're a great
Thank
advocate for
you.
having successfully made that transition. So, Helen, if people do want to access any of your stuff, what is the website name?
It's www.underwood-training.co.uk.
Lovely.
And I've also got a blog area on there with some videos that show AED awareness, how to use a pocket mask, uh, how to roll someone over, various bits and pieces, and some more recent articles and things as well.
Brilliant. Well, thanks so much, Helen, for having this great conversation with me. Really appreciate you giving your time and lovely to hear how much you're enjoying your new career.
Thank you so much, Joe.
Take care. So, welcome to this next little piece in the series of clinicians who have moved out of their clinician role into something else, sometimes something related, sometimes something totally different. And I'm really pleased to have Martin Christensen back. Martin is a veteran YouMatter interviewee, so he knows the score. And the conversation I'm going to have with Martin is a little bit different to the other ones I've had in this series. The reason I wanted to talk to Martin is he's pretty much actually in that transition. Well, he has left physiotherapy officially, but it's really recent. Hello, Martin, by the way. Um,
Uh,
thanks for coming back to YouMatter. So it was
Thanks for
only,
having me.
thank you. It was only what, the week before that you actually did your last shift as a physio, or your last week as
Yeah,
calling yourself a physio?
yeah, actually, 1 week today. So I left my clinic last Tuesday. Actually, that was my last day, and then
Wow.
stepped into my new profession, or what you can call it, on Friday. Yeah,
Good. Well, I really appreciate it, Martin. To have someone actually in the moment, I think, is a really useful part
yeah,
of this whole conversation series. So, give us a bit of background, Martin. I know where you've worked and what the transitions you've had, not just with your work life, but moving to a totally different part of the country as well. So, just give us a quick history of what brought you to the point of deciding that physiotherapy is not what you're going to do at the moment.
yeah. Okay, yeah. So I've run my own clinic, a private clinic, physio clinic, the last 7 or 8 years. And last year, my wife got an offer to take up a leadership role
Hmm.
in another town, her hometown, Buda, which meant us moving 6 hours further north. That was the case. So I
In Norway, we should let people know if they don't know.
in Norway, yeah, we're in Norway. And so what brought on the change first and foremost was like life circumstances. Me driving every week down to the clinic and being away from the kids and our new home for 4 or 5 days per week wasn't a good long-term solution, but I've done that a while now. And yeah, I guess so. First and foremost is life circumstances that led to this change. But I've been rather, uh, let's just say, I've been sick of the whole profession for a couple of years. A bit annoyed and frustrated, and just fed up with the intrigue of it all,
The
especially on
intrigue.
social media. The intrigue, yeah.
Mm.
And so when life handed me this choice and the offers of different physio uh, what do you call it, roles in the new town wasn't like I didn't really want to. I felt like
Mm.
okay, I could go work in the municipality stuff. I didn't fancy that. I could go work at the hospital. I didn't fancy that. And it became more and more clear that maybe I should look outside of the profession. So I started doing that and got called. Well, I applied for a working with youths, troubled youths that can't live at home for different reasons. May that be themselves or their family situation. So I applied for this gig. Thought it was interesting. Had an interview, got offered the role, and I just felt like, yeah, this is the next step.
So
I
did you
don't
say
want to go.
you got sort of headhunted for that role, or you found the role?
No, I applied for it. Yeah, I wish I was headhunted. That would have been cool,
We all
wouldn't
want to be
it? Like,
headhunted, don't
but I
we?
don't think anyone that listens to my podcast and listen to me talking is gonna headhunt me.
Scalp hunting, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, probably scaffolding. So yeah, the different life circumstances this last couple of years brought on the possibility of change. And when I looked into taking up new roles within the physio profession, like either in the our equivalent of the NHS or the municipality uh, roles, they just didn't seem interesting. I
Didn't
just
float
had
your
that,
boat.
yeah, didn't that sinking feeling of is this what I'm doing? Because I've been lucky. Like I've run my own clinic for many years, and I've been lucky in that I'm I've run my own days, my own schedule. I could have worked the way I wanted to work, the way the way which I think we should work, or some
Yeah.
of us. And going into a more strict role did not appeal to me at all.
Mm.
So yeah,
So
that's
if
what
you'd
brought on change. Yeah.
so if you'd been able to carry on in your where you lived before in your clinic, do you think you would have stayed? Do you think you'd still be doing that happily?
Oh yeah, I guess so at a certain extent, because I've been fed up for a couple of years meeting uh, the difference of opinions that's not debated rationally anymore, but just shouted at each other's, and I've gotten fed up about that. So I've been looking outside of the profession for a while,
Yeah.
but then again, I don't know. Maybe in a year or two, I would have reduced my working hours at the clinic and done something else on the
Mm.
side just to
Mm.
get that difference. But yeah,
Yeah, and it's interesting, Martin, because some people will have followed your marvelous Friday confessions on Twitter and your Facebook group, the Society of Average Physios and Failures. But for people that
yeah,
haven't come across you in that format, that was, I mean, that's been going on for the last 2, 3 years, hasn't it? And
yeah,
my watching that, so watching you from the outside and knowing you, that seemed to me to be a way that you were coping or you were airing your frustrations. And
yeah,
for you got a lot of people's interest, and there was a lot of sympathy with your views, and lots of people just loving the platform you created, to be honest, about the ridiculousness of us and what we do sometimes.
yeah.
Is that true? Was that helpful at the time was it
Yeah,
cathartic?
definitely a sort of coping mechanism, and like as you said, just getting my frustrations out there, and people have cheered on and backed me up, and I've found that really helpful and just good stuff. So I've seen more and more. I've just settled on that type of stuff rather than going into debates about, well, proper physio, if you could call it that, proper MSK debates, and just embracing that side of the clinician's life. And yeah, so coping strategy, or if not intended as that, has
Served, does it?
developed to be that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think I saw someone when you first announced on X, I think that you were going to be coming away from physio. I saw
yeah,
somebody comment, "Just get off X. That's your issue." What do you think about
yeah.
that?
Uh, yeah, I can definitely understand that viewpoint and that comment, because a lot of social media in our world is terrible. It's just shit, and a lot you get a lot of frustration just by watching and reading stuff that being put out there. But again, I enjoy uh, the ability or the option to reach out and talk to different clinicians around the world. So I don't think it's necessarily just a social media problem.
Hmm.
It's just that's just where the debates and the stuff happens now. So leaving that wouldn't be, well, at least for me, wouldn't be an option or the right thing to do.
Hmm.
But because that is just, well, let's ignore everything that makes my feelings a bit whoopsie daisy,
Yeah.
and just put a blindfold on and carry on. And that's not right to do either, is it? What
No, no. And anyone that's
what for
listened
me?
to your first podcast with me, where you were so honest about your history with depression and how you manage
Yeah,
those mental health issues and carry on being a physio, that was the thrust of your message to people, really, wasn't it? That, I'm here, I'm doing this, I'm not cured, and I still manage this stuff every day
yeah,
and I still turn up. And I know that has always been your preferred approach rather than um, denying. Well, and also, I mean, that's your whole Friday confessions thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
And the admitting you're an average physio and a failure on some, or you feel like it on some days. That
yeah, exactly.
overtness has
Yeah,
always been your appeal, and it's definitely something I have huge empathy with, but I also understand the vulnerabilities associated with
yeah.
being that kind of way. Um,
It's a double-edged sword, isn't it?
say that again.
So it's a double-edged sword, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So it's like coping and being able to pull that put out your vulnerability will English words
Vulnerability.
are not helping. Yeah. That one.
Yeah.
And yeah, putting out that and being able to just, as you said in the start, like point out all the ridiculous stuff that we
Mm.
encounter and think about and do and embrace that, but at the same time put yourself out there and not like stick your head in the sand. But
Yeah.
you can't deny the existence of difference of opinions. You can't deny the troubles, the problems, the stuff going on in our profession. So just leaving it and stick your head in the sand and just go away and enjoy yourself. Well, for some that's a good option, not for me.
So does that
So
mean,
yeah.
and I'm saying this with fingers crossed, does that mean you'll still be here communicating with us as a profession, even though you're not practicing?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely going to continue doing that. And hopefully now stepping back, maybe my interest in the profession will like peak again, stepping back and missing it because that's another thing that made me like embrace this change and just what take the option of the life circumstances to get out. It's because as I find myself not enjoying reading articles anymore.
Mm,
Couldn't be asked. Started reading and just like, oh, this is boring. This is
mm,
shit. And just like not feeling motivated or not feeling the want to like better myself
mm,
and know more. And that
mm.
hopefully when if that can come back, I'll
Yeah,
seek to rejoin the ranks of yeah,
that would be
healthcare
great.
professionals once
I'm
again.
sh
Yeah.
I'm sure loads of people sympathize with that view. I mean, it's ironic and tragic, isn't it, that the profession itself kills the enthusiasm. You're doing it every day, or doing it too
Yeah.
much, or doing it in the wrong environment where you don't feel, what you believe in is the way you can work. That's what prevents you from, as you say, wanting to better yourself and be a better physio.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, well, I really hope, yeah, maybe coming away a little bit, getting a breather, getting some perspective from a distance. Knowing you as I do, I'm not at all surprised to hear that you retain that interest, even if you're not actually doing the job for a little while.
Yeah.
Um, so tell us, Martin, about what you're going into, because it's quite different, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite different. So what I'm going into is I work at a youth institution
Yeah.
now for youth between the age of 13 to 18. And it's almost like a trauma center type of
Mm,
thing. It's an acute um, institution. So we get youths that are being tossed out of their homes or the police come with them.
mm,
So there's trouble, really trouble and tortured youths that get sent to us. And it's a real difference because like in as a physio, you meet people that want to be there, or well,
didn't get
to
bought
some
by the
extent at
police.
least, yeah.
Mm.
And then the people you are trying to help and protect and be there for now in my new work is they don't want to be there at all. They're just trying to escape
Mm,
every chance you get. But yeah. But as I see it, my role now is to be a good adult for some people that lack that influence in their life up till
mm,
now, and just make sure they are fed, have clean clothes, they have someone to talk to if they want to do that. There's someone who will stand by them in whatever context and situation arise, and just not leave them. So that's my
Yeah.
role. But it's pretty hard when you have to like physically use force to
Mm,
detain someone,
mm,
and you know this is a like is a kid,
yeah.
and that doesn't feel right. So I may or may not have fucked up on this whole profession change, but it remains to be seen.
I did see a comment yesterday about frying pans and fires
Yeah,
on
yeah,
this.
yeah. I was yesterday. I just came off of a shift going in 72 hours, and I was knackered because. But then again, everyone that starts a new gig, new
Yeah.
work type of thing, that's stressful.
Yeah, of
And being
course.
in a situation where like I'm not comfortable, but I'm not afraid either, is
Yeah.
putting an edge on that. That was
Yeah.
pretty knackered.
Yeah. That sounds like a hard uh, gig to sustain for 72 hours. Um,
Yeah,
so if you look back to how you really wanted to work and how you did work in your own clinic as a physio,
yeah.
the sort of skill sets that were really, you really held dear, the things that were really close to your heart, can any of those find a place in this new role?
Yeah, definitely. And that's pretty much why I was interested in this role, and even more so after getting through the interview, is that this role is about communication, about people feeling seen, heard. I'm, but at the same time, I'm not here to solve any problems.
Mm,
Right. So I do a lot of the same stuff as I did as a physio, like communication, talking, but just being safe and non-judgmental. But at the same time, I'm not in the positions where I need to solve anything, and that
mm,
feels quite nice. So I can
mm,
use a lot of things I've learned or developed being a clinician in this gig, right? I just I don't have the pressure of finding out what is it, what should we do about it.
mm.
So yeah, definitely.
Do you think that's one of the things that gets to physios in the end or health professionals?
Yes, certainly. Well, I think that was the part, the pressure that got me, right? And I think that, as you said, the Friday physical confessions became quite of a coping mechanism for that insecurity, that constant pressure of always having to be right or be better or understanding it all. And so yeah, I think that is probably the biggest issue for people that
Mm.
going out
Do you think
to
there's
get
anything,
out of that.
yeah, do you
Mm,
think there's anything, Martin, in like if you're someone who's a real truth seeker, on a
yeah,
real human level that, I don't mean just not telling fibs or things, but someone that really wants to understand the way things really are and that if that's your motivation, do you think there's anything in the fact that we have to kind of inhabit a duality, or we might be inhabiting a duality as therapists if we're we're brought up with this idea that there are diagnoses and there are correct solutions, and
mm,
then our experiences with patients, and to a certain extent, more modern evidence just systematically nudges at that, quite rightly, in my opinion, that
yeah,
there probably isn't a correct diagnosis most of the time, and there certainly isn't one way most of the time. And yet we don't seem to be able to quite shed that belief that, yeah, but if I just knew a bit more and I was just a bit better, I
yeah,
probably could most of the time get a correct diagnosis. It seems like we can't quite jump into this new way. We still there's something in us that still wants to hang on to this yes, but there is a right answer.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think so. But in my opinion, is well, my thoughts on the matter is that we probably fail to embrace. Like I've seen Ben Cormack talk about this a bit, and he says like, well, the it could be a diagnosis, a right diagnosis, but you just haven't got the tools or the equipment or the techniques or whatever to find out right now. And
Mm.
to embrace that this is what we can find, and this is there's always something. Um, and the failure to just embrace that and start talking about what can we actually find,
Yeah.
what is necessary by what we have and what we know
Mm.
to this day. So yeah, I think there's an issue there because I think
Mm.
there's a lot of clinicians still feeling that pressure. But,
Mm.
and yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, it's a silo, I know, and I probably live in my own echo chamber of people who think similarly to me. But it's like banging my head against the wall sometimes. In that everybody I talk to seems to, think this way and be desperate to move into this new era, and yet we just, totally get your frustration, Martin, because we're just not getting there. And I
no,
completely understand your situation of moving to a new town and just going, oh, I can't put myself back in a situation where there's too many things that jar with where I want this profession to be, really. I
yeah,
totally get that.
yeah, and that probably hits the nail on the head right there.
Mm,
It's like I felt that going to a new place and starting again
mm,
and to didn't have that in me at
no.
all.
And I
I
know,
worked too hard for too long to like be at the bottom again. Yeah.
yes, and I know your circumstances that even starting a new clinic, your wife had got a very busy job, your kids are still very young. And you loved your last clinic, didn't you? And the location and the people that you treated.
Did yeah, it was wonderful. Like small island, get to know the people,
Mm,
and there's just there's been a lot of good words and actually, and this is like some of the best thing that happened this weekend at the new job. So it turned out that was one colleague that had a friend back on the island, and she was like, when she got the new names on the new hires, we got four new hires,
mm.
and saw my name and my where I came from, and that was Harry, still, and she was like, okay, I got a friend in Harry. I'll come see who is
Mm.
this little shit. And and so she wrote to her friend like, "Do you know him? Do you know the name? He's starting a new job here. How is he?" And the response she got back was, "Yeah, I hear it. I've never met him. I hear him. He's a cool dude, and the whole island are sad that he's left."
Oh,
And I felt that I was like, "Yeah,
and that's someone that's never
that's
even met you, but that's just by
yeah,
reputation.
yeah, exactly." And
Oh,
that is wonderful. And I feel like I've succeeded in my clinic when that is
mm,
some of the like backhanded, not
absolutely.
backhand compliment, but yeah,
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 yeah, secondhand.
yeah. So and that was wonderful, and but still, yeah, it was the right decision. Okay, yeah,
Yeah, good. Because I don't want to draw you back to go, oh, wasn't that amazing? And you haven't got it anymore. Yeah, I don't want to just be melancholy about it. I hear you that,
yeah,
yeah, it was a good thing. I did really well in those
yeah,
circumstances that allowed me to be who I want to be and be the physio I want to
yeah,
be, but now something different. So,
yeah.
yeah, I hear you just had your first shift, 72 hours, really tough call, tough situation, trauma. How's it going to go? What's your prediction? How do you think this is going to play out over the next few weeks and months?
Well, well, hopefully, like the first day on this ship, I was like constantly thinking, "What the fuck have I done? This is insane!" Like you're getting met with. Don't let them get anything sharp. They'll stab you. They'll try to kill you.
Oh,
They'll kick
oh
you.
God.
Step out of. This one spits. This one pukes. This one. This is
I don't know why I'm
insane. But at
laughing.
this,
This sounds awful.
yeah, it's just ludicrous, really. And on the second day, I felt a little bit calmer, a little bit more relaxed, but still on edge. And the last day, I was like, yeah, I can do this. So my last day, I just made dinner, made lunch, made supper, made dessert, had a drive with one of the youths, like is more relaxed. So I think it's gonna be a wonderful place to get to know myself and get to know others. Because there is a real chance, and it will happen, where I come in a situation that will need to defend not only my life, but
Mm,
the life of my colleagues and
mm,
use force, real force
mm.
against kids. So that is still at the back of my mind. So probably let's talk after I had to do that
Yeah,
times.
yeah.
Yeah. So
That's
that is
very
about, I
real, isn't
think I
it?
will enjoy it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
No, I see that, Martin. And again, it's that truth-seeking thing, isn't it? This is genuine, this is real life, this is raw. These problems
Yeah.
are happening now. There's going to be some pretty spicy moments by the sound of it.
Oh yeah.
So what part of you is going to grow, do you think, um, through this?
You know, funny thing is that I feel like it's my uncertainty part that's gonna be
Yeah.
like my a little bit of anxious self and just be more steady in my role and more I grow actually as an adult,
Uh-huh.
uh like a grown man. I think that what I feel is that I will learn to handle myself in situations that are uncomfortable
Hmm.
and learn more and grow in a way about this non-judgmental stuff.
Yeah.
Like when you're getting kicked and screamed at and spat at and puked on, it's really easy to yeah get angry and go out and say, "What are you? Why are you doing this? You little
Yeah.
yeah whatever." But at the same time, work with the feeling that these are really trouble youths. They're just acting out. Everything is going black. It's not nothing personal. It's not against you. It's just the situation, the context, and everything, the history, the trauma. And so being more growing more comfortable in that understanding is
Mm.
somewhere I think I'll develop. Yeah,
And do you get support in that kind of role for you?
yeah. What I was worried about before I began is that was going that it was going to be stuck up. Like you get one meeting a month with people and talk about it, and you can't have dark humor and stuff like that. But it was the first day. I was just met with dark humor. It's all over the place. So it's a continuous process of just dealing with it
Yeah.
together with my colleagues
Processing.
and everyone I met had the same type of like humor, laugh it off, and telling me about last break attempt, and people were getting kicked and smacked on the back of the head and running. Like one of the colleagues had to he was sleeping, so had to co was being called and just ran half naked through the woods in the middle of the night and like rugby tackles. Someone was trying to like take down one other colleague, and being said with like a smile, and it's like I had to run really, really fast. You should have seen me. I was great.
Broke
And
my
just be able
PB.
to, yeah, exactly. And so like the coping process is continuous, and I really like that. And yeah,
It sounds
and
like it could
yeah,
really play to your, well, certainly play to your humor. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, again, I keep coming back to this word being real. You're someone. Well, you talked a lot about professionalism, haven't you? But in
yeah,
physio, but here I'm sure you're going to see a completely different definition of professionalism.
yeah.
That
Because like
wouldn't fit the physio mold, but probably is something very strong in its own right.
yeah, and I think that I wouldn't call any of them I worked with through the weekend unprofessional at
No.
all. But you put some of the things they said about the youths and about themselves and about the other
Mm.
colleagues out of context, out of that place, and it would sound like horrible.
Yeah.
But but it's not unprofessional within that context, and that is for me key. Like you heard me speak about professionalism elsewhere, and yeah, but it's a different. different environment.
Different
It's a
context.
freer environment than physio when you're
Yeah.
talking about professionalism. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. But what they are really, really tough on, or strict on, is like confidentiality,
Mm.
stuff like that.
Mm.
More so even than healthcare professionals.
Yeah,
There's
fair
a
enough.
that
Yeah.
is established at the get-go.
Yeah. Zero
So,
tolerance.
and yeah, zero. So yeah.
Mm. Well, Martin, part of me really, really, no, a lot of me really, really hopes this goes well for you because I want it to go well for you. And it sounds at the moment like a really good place for you to see whether this feels like a better fit. I
Yeah.
also want to know what you're going to miss about us, and I hope there is quite a lot of things. What will you miss about the world of physio?
Uh, you know what I'll miss is the moment you get a good connection with a patient and you see gradual success,
Mm.
like that little back and forward. And also I'll miss the yeah, the conversations with patients when you just talking through everything and I don't know what's going on, the patient doesn't know what's going on, but it's just that back and forth, back and forth.
Mm.
Maybe I tried this, maybe I'll try that.
Mm.
Yeah. What do you think about this? Yeah. I'll really miss that. And I'll miss of course I'll miss being a physio because like it's an identity, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's called Friday Physio Confessions, right? So yeah, a lot of stuff I'll miss, but I'll miss the connection
Yeah.
with the
Well,
patients the most.
I totally get that. Well, I'm going to finish by putting something to you, Martin, that I know I speak for a large part of the profession when I say that we will miss you just as much as the Islanders do. And we have loved you just as much. And, you've just sat there and described patient-centered, evidence-based care to me. So I'd say go off, do what you need to do, come back when we have caught up with you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think you have caught up with me and left me in the dust already, a lot of you, most of you. But let's see what the future brings and hopefully I'll get back. But when I left the clinic on Tuesday, I just felt relief.
Yeah,
And when I'll stop miss it again, I'll give you a
yeah.
call and we'll sort it out. Yeah, it's a process. As I said, I don't know if I fucked up yet or not. We'll see.
Just taking the next right step, aren't you?
Yeah,
What feels right
but
at the moment.
yeah, but I will finish up my my master's degree.
Good.
I'm writing that as we speak, or I'm thinking about writing it. I haven't started. I've one
Picking
more
bits, the
interview
important
to
bits.
go, and
And you're talking
so
about it at
maybe
you're talking about that at Therapy Expo as well, aren't you?
yes, parts of it I will talk about on the Therapy Expo, definitely, and I'm going to be talking about more of the process of thinking around professionalism more from a more practical standpoint, and not this stiff-necked suit and tie
Yeah.
stuff, and try to relate that to being human. But at the
Well, I'm
same time, I'll try to get into some problems with it. Yeah.
well, I'm sure after a few more shifts in your current role, you'll have some extra material for that talk.
Yeah, probably. And well, hopefully. Well, we'll see. But I'll first do on Therapy Expo, I'll first do a session on the hands-on hub with Anna Maria. More practical, so I have some stories and some scenarios I will bring up there, and
Mm.
I think you'll find them enjoyable. Can't spill them now. And after the main session at Therapy Expo, I'll be doing a Q&A with Matt Phillips.
Oh, great.
So yeah, so there's three different chances to see me at Therapy Expo,
Well, I know
and
I
I'll
am
be
definitely going to see you because I'll be on the same hub
yes,
as you, and I'm very much looking forward to that.
yeah,
So,
likewise.
Martin, thanks so much for coming on and being as honest as you always are, and thank you so much for what you've done for physio up until now, and enjoy
Oh,
this next phase.
Thanks for inviting me again. I always love talking to you, and been a good and yeah, thanks
Take care. Enjoy the next shift.
as well. You as well.
So there we have it. That's the end of the series of interviews that I'm going to do for now about clinicians moving into other roles. I hope you enjoyed the conversations. I hope it gave you a chance to reflect on your own situation. I hope you were able to positively reflect on the the flexible skill set that we have as physiotherapists. And if you're not thinking of making a move, that's great. It means you're happy. And I also hope it's given you a greater appreciation for the person you are going into your clinical role and the vast skill set that you employ every day to carry out the things you need to do in your job. On the other hand, if you are thinking of making a career move, it's not an easy decision. I think you've heard from all the people that there was some head scratching and wasn't something they decided overnight. So, all credit to you. I hope you're getting the support you need. I hope these conversations have helped in some way. And if you do move into another role, then I hope it goes really well for you. So, whatever role you're in, whether you are in your clinical role and happily staying there, whether you are moving into something else, whether you have moved into something else, I suspect because of the person you were that went into your clinical role to start with, you are someone who is used to giving of yourself in many, many different spheres. So, as ever, my message is to remember your part in the center of all of this. You are the most important part because if you're not looking after yourself, you cannot be in service to all these other people in your life. So, in short, please remember that you matter.